Welcome back to another episode of First Bite, our Detroit Lions midweek podcast, where we bring in an interview to help you get to know our Detroit Lions. And we are in the middle, actually the end, I should say, of our free agent series, where we are getting to know the newest Detroit Lions. By the way, my name is Jeremy Reisman. I'm the producer over at Pride of Detroit, Detroit Lions beat writer. You can find me at Detroit Online on Twitter, and with me, as always, is senior editor of Pride of Detroit at Ryan_POD on Twitter. Ryan Matthews is here. What's going on, Ryan?
Not a whole lot. Excited for this one. We talked about this a little bit before the show. Like, this is the one guy that I think both of us are most intrigued to learn about. I mean, David Montgomery played in the division, Cam Sutton, big time signing. So you kind of dive into him a little bit, but this is the guy who maybe provides the most intrigue because it's the most like Brad Holmes signing, right?
Yes. Yeah, a guy that's coming off an injury, but might play a pretty significant role given a 1-year kind of prove it deal. Emmanuel Moseley is today's topic, and we have got an expert on Emmanuel Moseley. I'm calling him as expert. I don't know if he'll call himself an expert on that, but what he is an expert on is 49ers football. He's a beat writer for NBC Sports Bay Area. Matt Mayoko is with us. Matt, how you doing?
I'm doing well, Jeremy. Ryan, good to be here.
Well, happy to have you back. You've actually been on the podcast a couple times. We talked to Robert Saleh way back in the day. We did a 49ers preview with you. But let's talk Emmanuel Moseley. And I just want to kind of get your first impressions when the transaction hit the wire, when it was all over Twitter. What was your first reaction to Emmanuel Moseley signing with the Lions?
My first reaction was surprise, not so much that he left the 49ers, but that he didn't go to Robert Saleh and the Jets or D'Amico Ryans and the Texans, because I was kind of under the opinion that because his season ended so early with the torn ACL, that would have to be somebody who knows him and knows him personally in order to go out and make a commitment toward him. Now, as you mentioned, it was a 1-year deal, so it's not a huge commitment that any team's going to make. But I just thought that he's one of those guys that the closer you're to, the more impressed by him you are. So I really thought it would be somebody with a direct knowledge of him and who had worked with him in the past that would end up signing him.
Well, because of that, Matt, like you mentioned the ACL injury, I guess I want to know, how much did that factor into whether or not the 49ers decided to bring him back or not?
I think actually, I thought when he had that injury, which was a devastating blow to the 49ers, week 5, I guess it was, of the season. When that happened, my first thought was, well, Emmanuel Moseley might be coming back to the 49ers after all, because I did not think that they would even come close to being able to re-sign him if he had remained healthy. That's my way of saying I expected him to get a really nice contract. I expected him to get a 3-4 year contract for, I don't know, $10 million a year. That's how good of a player I think he is. So the first thing I thought of was he might have to go sign, or he will have to sign kind of a 1-year prove-it deal. And I thought that opened the door significantly for the 49ers to get back in there. But and once you knew that it was going to be a 1-year deal, I thought he was. I thought, I guess when the training camp started, not training camp, but when the free agency period started, I thought he'd be returning to the 49ers. In fact, there was an interview about a week or so before free agency. Nick Bosa was talking to Richard Sherman, and Bosa flat out said, well, we're going to be strong on defense again this year. We have Emmanuel Moseley coming back. And everybody thought like, oh, I guess he's coming back. But, obviously very early in free agency, the Lions made a play for him and they got him.
Well, you mentioned that people that are close to him kind of see maybe more potential than maybe some people that are far away from him. So what is it about him? Is it him as a person? Is it him as a player, as a competitor? What is kind of that secret sauce that maybe those only around Emmanuel Moseley know?
Yeah, I think it's all the above. He's not a big guy. I think he's listed as 5'11", 185. Mm-hmm. I'm sure he weighs a little bit more than that now. But undrafted, coming out of Tennessee, spent that first year by and large on the practice squad. And I remember in the 2019 season, week 5 or so, they had kind of a marquee Monday night game against the Cleveland Browns. And this is when everybody thought the Cleveland Browns were going to win that division and be a big time factor and maybe even win the Super Bowl. That Baker Mayfield, who was showing promise at that stage in his career. They had Jarvis Landry, they had Odell Beckham Jr., and he was going to be making his first start on Monday night. And I think people around here were kind of panicked. And going back to Richard Sherman, he said the only reason anybody, fan base or media or whatever, is talking like 49ers should be panicked that Emmanuel Moseley is starting this game is because they haven't seen him. They weren't in practices. They didn't watch him all of last season. And basically, Richard Sherman said if he had been in a position to be on the active roster and play last season, nobody would be panicked. And I guess what he did was he came in that first game and played really well and continued to play well. He is, like I mentioned, his physical stature. He is a tough guy. And maybe because of that, he's had some injuries that have kept him out of the lineup. Maybe not. I mean, I don't think the torn ACL was a matter of him being too aggressive or, being too physical for his size. But, I was reminded earlier today, last season, right before the injury, he was playing some really good football. And D'Amico Ryans, the 49ers defensive coordinator at the time, referred to Emmanuel Moseley as a guy with the heart of a lion. Hey, how's that for foreshadowing? And so, he plays hard. He's smart. He's soft-spoken. He doesn't say a whole lot. He just gets the job done. And I guess the other thing is, he hasn't put up like huge interception numbers in his career. So that always kind of pops out if you're following cornerbacks. But he's just very solid. And granted, he hasn't played a whole lot the last 2 seasons because of the injuries. But I don't believe he's allowed a touchdown reception the last 2 years either. So he's just a really good player. Like I said, I mean, I was expecting him to really cash in and probably be the most sought after cornerback on the free agent market had he made it through this past season injury free.
Yeah, I mean, Jeremy, that kind of sounds like if the injury doesn't happen, he gets Cam Sutton money, maybe even more than that,
maybe
right?
Even more, right? Yeah. And so the Lions potentially land 2, maybe 3 of the best defensive backs in free agency if everything works out, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, and 2 of them Tennessee Volunteers, right? True. So it's the Lions' crusade to become the Detroit Volunteers, as we've been joking about. So Matt, my other question then, and you kind of talked about this a little bit, but the 49ers are just known, like especially with D'Amico Ryans and everything, that the defensive side of the ball has been a strength of their team for so long, and really the only thing that's ever seemed to slow it down is injuries. Mm-hmm. Did Moseley show something special to you in his time with San Francisco that made you think like, oh, like this guy can be a player wherever he goes? It's not just because he has a pass rusher like Nick Bosa or, a linebacker like Fred Warner, who's a unicorn. Is there something that Emmanuel Moseley shows as far as traits or something that is translatable to any defense or any team?
I think so. I mean, I think that he's a press corner. He's physical at the line of scrimmage. He disrupts timing. Like I said, you look at him and he's not super imposing, but he's tough. And I think in high school, his nickname was like Baby Ray Lewis. So, this is a guy that when he signed with Tennessee, he was 145 pounds. Right. And the guy who recruited him and watched him in high school and started to really get to know him, like had to kind of stand on the table to even get him a scholarship to Tennessee because he was so small. But he plays bigger than his size. He's not afraid to get in there. He's good in run support. You have to be in this style of defense. In the past, this defense has been known, as basically cover 3, but they became a lot more varied in that. But I think he can play all styles of corner. But I think just the fact that he's willing to put his nose in there and mix it up and play run support and throw off timing between quarterback and wide receiver. It kind of works both ways. I do think that he benefited from certainly that 2019 season when he got in there toward the end of the year and basically unseated, a pretty high draft pick to win that starting job going into the playoffs and in the Super Bowl. I do think that he also is the kind of player that helps the pass rush because with his kind of sticky coverage near the line of scrimmage, he does throw off the timing and the rhythm, and he does give maybe his edge rushers a beat longer to get to the quarterback, because he's not one of these guys that if he were to play it his way, he would not be 7 yards off the line of scrimmage. He would not be allowing the receiver a free release. So I think what he does better than most is that he makes the wide receiver work for every inch he gets off the snap of the ball.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the ACL, because the Lions have been kind of dodgy about information on that, and Emmanuel, I don't think, was too eager to talk about goals and all that sort of stuff. So by your reports, by your understanding, how far along is he, and is week 1 starter a realistic expectation for him?
Now, again, there's no real inside information here that I have, other than I talked to him. I saw him, I don't know, a month after the surgery. And then again, I believe it was in Philadelphia before the NFC Championship game. And he was walking around just fine. And, he didn't give me any kind of time frame, but just in small talk, he intimated to me that everything was doing just fine. And the 49ers have said that it was a clean ACL. There wasn't any other stuff. There wasn't, to my knowledge, any meniscus or any other ligament damage that would slow down that rehab. So again, this is just a guess, but I would expect him. I think there's a really good chance that he would be ready for the start of the regular season, if not, being available at some point in training camp. That's just my guess, maybe educated guess, maybe just kind of leaping to conclusions. But I got the sense that everything went pretty smoothly. And I would also guess that if you're the Lions and you're signing a guy to a 1-year, $6 million contract, and you have any questions whether he's going to be available, you bring him in, you do the physical, and you do whatever you need to do to make sure he checks out. And so I'm reading between the lines, but I would think that he will be available week 1 of the regular season.
Well, Matt,
the other thing, I don't know if
go ahead.
you guys want to talk more about this, but he's also versatile. I don't know what the plan is there, but he is fully capable of sliding inside and covering the slot. So I think you're getting a really good outside cornerback, and kind of as a bonus, maybe in a pinch, he can slide inside as well.
I mean, that's just all of their defensive backs that they've signed, Jeremy,
yeah,
right?
pretty much everyone they had
CJ Gardner-Johnson is like, hey, nickel or safety, or Cam Sutton.
Yeah, and so what that tells me is they're putting a high priority on tackling, because you cannot be a nickelback and shy away from tackling. That is, being a nickelback is every bit as about tackling as it is about coverage. And so that tells me that kind of is a pretty good indicator of what they're looking for from their defensive backs.
Yeah, it's a good point. So Matt, this question might require you to dig in the old memory bank a little bit, but do you have just a bona fide, this is an Emmanuel Moseley play from his 49ers career? Is it from that 2019 run in the playoffs and into the Super Bowl, or just a play that it's like, oh man, only that guy can make a play like that?
I don't know that anything necessarily comes to mind. There are 3 plays that I remember. One of them not good, the other 2 good. And I'll start with the not good one.
Perfect.
And this is a really difficult play. I don't know if you remember Super Bowl LIV, Super Bowl 54, but the 49ers had a big lead in the fourth quarter, 10-point lead, and it was a 3rd and 15 play. And they ran a play that the Kansas City Chiefs did called WASP, where Tyreek Hill basically ran I don't even know how to describe it. I guess it's a post pattern, and then he comes back. So it's like, he runs his deep post, and then cuts back to the sideline that he was on. So 49ers were in a cover 3, and I think Emmanuel Moseley at that point didn't have a whole lot of experience, but the key was they gave Mahomes enough time and gave Tyreek Hill enough time to be able to run that entire route. So Moseley had it'd be the 3rd on the offense's left side. And when Hill cut in toward the middle, Moseley got off of Hill and went to the guy in his zone, but then Hill came back. And that was a big play. Yeah. And I never really got an answer of what the right thing to do on that play was, but I always got the impression that Moseley could have played that one different, but it was also a very difficult play because if he had continued on with Hill, then the space in front of him would have been open for a 15-yard gain and a first down. But through all that, he that it was a big play in that game, and the Chiefs went on to win it. I think I think that kind of play made him better because that was something that he hadn't seen before. So the experience of that made him a better player, and he certainly did not back down from that, or it did not impact him in any way negatively moving forward.
Right.
Yeah, two guys that you definitely don't want to give a lot of time to: Patrick Mahomes and Tyreek Hill.
Absolutely. And of course, 49er fans are still talking about how Nick Bosa was held on that play, or else
yes,
Mahomes would not have been able to get that pass off. Two other plays. Week 18, 2021 season, 49ers needed to win that game against the LA Rams, and they fell behind 17-0 in that game. And they came back, tied it up at 17-17. And I forget, it was like late third or early fourth. I know the Rams felt like they had a play call to take advantage of Moseley's aggressiveness. And it was a deep pass to that side, Stafford to Ben Skoranek. And Moseley was in single coverage, but he had safety help over the top. But he maybe bit early, but turned and showed great recovery speed and made an amazing interception deep down the field. We're talking like 50 yards down the field. And that's a play where I think the Rams felt like there was something there to be had. Mm-hmm. Maybe Moseley had shown something that they felt they could exploit. They tried to exploit it, and Emmanuel Moseley made a big time play. 49ers ended up winning that game, and then because they won that game, they got into the playoffs, and then they moved into the NFC Championship game. And then the other play that I recall very well was Emmanuel Moseley grew up in Greensboro, North Carolina, about 90 minutes outside of Charlotte, and this was his first game going back to face the Carolina Panthers. So he had a bunch of friends and family, and it was just kind of a neat thing for a guy who's been basically underrated, the underdog, the small kid, all that, all the way through, including, going to Tennessee, getting undrafted, and then just kind of working his way. And in that game, it was absolute the best and the worst. That game, he picked off Baker Mayfield. It wasn't necessarily a great defensive play because I think Moseley was in zone coverage. The pass was overthrown. Moseley did make, kind of an uncontested interception, got up to his feet, and then showed amazing ability to kind of weave his way into the end zone. So he had a pick six in that game, but then later in the game, that's when he tore his ACL. So I'm giving you the full mix of kind of the good, the bad of Emmanuel Moseley. But I mean, this is probably as good a place as any to tell you that I think Emmanuel Moseley is a really good player, and I think that I think the Detroit Lions will be ecstatic with what he shows them, assuming everything's checks out health wise. I think they'll really be happy with the kind of player they're getting.
Well, before we let you go, I think we got two more here, and one is we really like to get to know these guys off the field. So, is there any off the field anecdote or moment, or maybe just pulling him aside in the locker room that kind of gives us a little peer into his personality?
He's just a very soft-spoken guy. Yeah. He's not going to give you the great quotes. He's not going to go out of his way to make himself available or visible. He's not going to stand up on the podium and ask to be interviewed. He's just a very soft-spoken guy who has earned tons of respect through every level of the organization, from staff members to coaches to executives to teammates, just by the way he handles business. I mean, I think he takes his job very seriously. He's had to work for everything. And I think it just kind of shows with the way that he approaches his day-to-day work. So, I mean, I can't think of anything flashy he's done off the field. He's just a solid. I look at him as just a solid dude and a solid player.
mean, you kind of have to be to go from undrafted rookie to where he is today.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Don't want to hold your feet to the fire, Matt. If you hate grading things, I'm sorry, but if you could, and it seems like everything you've said has been pretty glowing about Emmanuel Moseley, could you grade the signing for the Detroit Lions?
I mean, it's a 1-year deal. It's $6 million. I don't know the Lions salary cap situation, but I'm assuming they're in very good shape when it comes to the cap.
Yeah.
So I could not give this anything lower than an A minus. I mean, I think he's that good. I think that it's a low risk situation with a potential high payoff. Again, I was surprised that he ended up somewhere that he's not familiar with, a lot of the people there. But I think that obviously the 49ers drew a line. How much can they pay him with the players they already have? And if you'd asked me, what that line would be, I probably would have said $5 million for 1 year. The Lions got him for $6 million for the 1 year. A lot of 49er fans here were kind of surprised the 49ers didn't go that high to match him. But I guess when you look at it, if he stays healthy, he's going to earn that. The only question for him is that, he has had difficulty staying healthy. So I don't know what the role is envisioned for him being there, but whatever it is, he's not going to back down from a challenge. He's not going to back down from competition. So at the very least, I would expect to see Emmanuel Moseley on the field a lot for the Lions. And I don't know if you guys know this, but week 18 after the Sunday night game, I anointed the Detroit Lions the 2023 NFC North champions. And then again, I believe when that signing became official, I again said the 2023 NFC North champion Detroit Lions have signed Emmanuel Moseley. So no pressure on Dan Campbell and his bunch, but I'm telling you, there's pressure.
Yeah, man, no pressure to win the first division title this franchise has seen in 30 years. No pressure at all.
Not at all. No.
Oh, man. Well, I would love to see the 49ers and the Lions go at it in the playoffs. Right? Wouldn't that be awesome?
I felt like we were going to get it that 1 year with Jim Schwartz and
Jim Harbaugh. Yeah, if that happens, they need to have Schwartz and Harbaugh as the honorary captains for that game.
Like the coin toss.
There wouldn't be a handshake. There would be a back slap before the game.
I love it. Well, Matt, let me give you a minute here to kind of promote your stuff. Tell them where the people can find you and find your work.
Yeah, I'm on all social media, Twitter, however long Twitter remains alive.
Good luck with
Instagram.
your check mark, by the way.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, gotta. Yeah, I'm not going to be reaching my pocket to pay for that. It's a Maioco, MAIOCCO NBCS, and so that's where you can find me, and also the 49ers Talk podcast. My colleague Jennifer Lee Chan and I drop a couple podcasts a week, including just the recently completed NFL owners meetings in Arizona, where we talk about some rule changes. And I don't know if you've heard this, but the 49ers have some quarterback stuff going on. And, last I saw I think they might be Vegas's favorite to win the NFC, but nobody can tell you who their starting quarterback is going to be. And if you put 3 people in a room, you might have 3 different answers. Brock Purdy, Trey Lance, Sam Darnold. Personally, I have no idea.
Well, that's going to be a fun next 5 months for you before the season starts. An awesome quarterback battle. But Matt, appreciate your time, man. That was great stuff, and we'll catch up with you again soon. I'm sure you might be one of our only 3-time guests. So
wow.
I very much appreciate all your time.
I'm honored. Well, thank you very much, Jeremy, Ryan. I appreciate it. And I'll certainly be watching the Lions from afar and seeing if my words prove prophetic, just like D'Amico Ryan's words of Emmanuel Moseley has the heart of a lion.
Perfect. Thanks, Matt. And thank you all for listening. We will be back with more First Bite. We're going to start turning our focus towards the NFL draft. But until next time, thanks for listening. It's chaos. Be kind.